Hi, my name is Megan Chandler, and today I'm going to be here talking to you about how to create an effective writing assignment. First, we have to establish a few ground rules about writing and make sure that our students understand those rules. Then we need to determine the topic as well as what grade level that we're going to be teaching for this assignment. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing a secondary education assignment for English, which is going to be targeted more towards seniors, juniors, or seniors. So by the secondary level, students should really have a good grasp on the writing process. At this point, they should know that each writing that they put together is going to have a topic, an introduction, a body, and then, of course, a conclusion. For a research paper, it's important that the students actually follow this process and include research after, they do the topic, then the research, pre-writing, writing, revision, editing, and then publishing. So writing is a process. Obviously, there's a lot of steps. But before we do anything with our writing, we first have to make sure that we have a good understanding of what we're writing about. And this is where research comes in. Research is important in so many ways. If you're writing a paper on a historical event, or you're writing a paper on a person, or anything like that, the facts are so important to get right, obviously. And you want to make sure that you cite those sources. So that's another part of writing an effective paper is having a good reference page, citing your sources correctly. So let's get back to the basics here. So we're going to choose a topic for our paper. In this scenario, the topic that we are going to be looking at is a historical event. So I want you to kind of be thinking about an event that sticks out to you in history, because we're going to use that later. So we're going to pick our topic, and then we're going to go into the researching portion of our writing. When you're doing research, it's important to get scholarly articles. You don't just want to get a Wikipedia or anything like that. And a lot of students at the secondary level think that those are actual resources. So for an educator perspective, for you and I, it's important that we make sure those kids know these are not correct. These are not real resources for a research type paper. Pre-writing, a lot of people look at pre-writing as a rough draft, which is fine because it's sort of what it is. Pre-writing lets us put all of our ideas together on paper, and then we can add or take away from that, hence the rough draft. In my classroom, I like to have the students turn the rough draft in as an ungraded assignment, and I'll read through that and make corrections and suggestions and so on, and hand the rough draft back to them. So therefore, their pre-writing would be completed. Now, that is an ungraded assignment just for coaching purposes for my students. Then we get into writing. So writing, this is where we put it all together. We take our topic, what we've learned about our topic, we take our rough draft, and we implement all of that, and we put it together into this one beautiful piece of writing. And in my classroom, again, I have the students turn that in. This is a graded assignment. I will go through and make corrections. And so at this point, the students have turned in a rough draft, a full draft, and I've revised it for them, or not revised it, but made, corrections the way that I see fit. I give it back to them, and I ask them to do a revision, to edit the paper, and to make any corrections that they need to make before their final draft is due. So once we do that, then they publish their final product. The students turn that into me, and that is That's the last chance that they get to make any corrections. So as you can see, this process is more of a, it's guided learning for the students. So I walk them all the way through their research papers, but they're very clear on how they're supposed to write. Another thing is setting clear expectations. So my students, I want them to know at the beginning of the school year what I expect from them in their writing and how to make it an effective writing. The students know that I'm going to give them feedback, but I also expect them to turn their work in on time. I give them clear instructions, which I hope in turn gives them the ability to write their piece of material effectively. So students, if they don't understand the material, all of these steps that I've talked about, it's very hard for them to move forward. So it's important that as an educator, you and I take the time to really ask, informative, do an informative assessment, make sure they know that what they're doing. And in the secondary education world, these students most of the time will ask if they don't understand, but sometimes, you just kind of can see it in their eyes that they don't. So not all writing requires research, and it doesn't always require research to be effective. So you can have a creative writing, as long as the writing is in a logical form where the reader, the audience can understand what's happening, then that's really half the battle in being an effective writer. So what we want to do is we want to take all of our general thoughts and ideas and just put something together that we can give to the audience that they can make sense of. We want to make sure that it does not have any grammatical errors. And this is part of me as a teacher, the revision, the editing, and all of the drafts that I make my students do. That's part of my, I guess, my lesson plan. So before we go, we're finished here. I want to pause and kind of go back to what I asked you to do earlier. Think of a historical event. So I want you to pause the camera for a minute and go and look up a historical event that sticks out in your mind. I want you to find a scholarly source, a journal article. You can use Google Scholar, and an effective research paper has to have a good thesis. So I'd like for you to write a thesis statement plus 3 sentences. And that should give you an idea of kind of where a research paper starts for a student. Once we finish that, I've given, as you can see on my video, I've attached a sheet of paper. It's my expectations for my class that I hand out. And it goes home to my parents and to my students, and it's all about writing expectations. I expect you to use good grammar. I expect you to cite your sources. I expect you to be focused. I expect you to turn in your drafts on time. I expect my students to have their ducks in a row when they write, and I think that is very important on being an effective writer. And like I said, there's so many ways to complete a writing assignment effectively, but in order for it to be, in my eyes as an English teacher, completely effective, it has to be, it has to flow good. It has to be cohesive and logical to the topic at hand, and I have to be able to know by reading it that my student knows exactly what they're talking about. Thank you.